Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Raising the New Earth. Today we have a special guest. She is a spiritual teacher, a mother, a mentor. She incorporates Reiki, essential oils, sound healing, crystals into her practice. Alisha worked with Deepak Chopra at the Chopra Center in California. Later, she founded her own wellness center, Healing Art School, and developed Yinki Yoga. Alisha has spent the last 15 years dedicating to helping others. She holds weekly sacred tea ceremonies and luxurious retreats in Costa Rica and in Italy, where she leads mindfulness practices to awaken this spiritual alchemist from within. So, without further ado, please welcome Alisha Olivier Park. Hi,
Thank you.
Alisha.
Thank you so much. That's a lot, right? That's a big intro.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't even begin to cover how amazing you are, it's just words.
Thank you. That's so sweet. It was neat to hear you reflect those beautiful ways in which we can bring balance to our lives and wellness. And those were some of the tools that I've used in my journey that I've been inspired to share with other people, and to be able to bring them all together to create a way that we can move through life with grace, with ease, and really feel like these practices that we have within us that inspire us can be what really guides and leads for us. So it was sweet to hear you kind of reflect all those beautiful modalities.
Oh. So tell us how you found yourself needing to sail on your spiritual arc and be of service as a mentor and a spiritual teacher. How did it start for you?
Well, I think I was born. I think that's where it started for
Love
me.
that.
Yeah. And I feel from such a young age, there was just this sense that there was a purpose, right? There was a purpose, not just that I had a purpose, but that there, in fact, was a purpose for every being. And that was, for me at least, the most inspiring and important part. And so from a very young age, even in my art or storytelling, it usually came back to what I refer to now as the hero's journey, right? Joseph Campbell so beautifully depicts that all stories have this flow, this arc, and that tends to be my biggest inspiration, and just really how I feel that each one of us can move through this life journey is remembering that we are this hero. It doesn't matter about the gender, but we are the main character
Right.
of this epic story called life. And for me, I've just, like I said, I felt it since the moment I was born. I know what it feels like to be the lost hero, because it wasn't like, oh, I was born and everything has been fine since, just lovely, right? No difficulties, no challenges, but as I went along my path, I really got to, I guess for me, I have a really deep love for being with people and for listening to people, and especially their stories, right? Their journey and what this life, has been for them, and what the journey has brought to them. And so as I went on my own hero's journey, I realized there's certainly times where we could use some assistance or we could use some allies along the way to help us when we get in those difficult spaces.
That's so true. And I've heard about your work for a long time, and I looked into your work even more so, and I think it is so profound. And so much of the work that at least I saw you do is connected to the inner child and psychophysiology and the fears that need to be acknowledged. So, can you lead us through the process of how you guide a client in peeling off those layers and finding their peace?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So for me, I find that in my journey, everything kept coming back to some core principles, or even if we would say kind of a root or core issues a lot of the time. And so that is why all of those beautiful, magical modalities that you mentioned are all very important and valuable. And what I found is if we could do Reiki, we could meditate, we can turn ourselves upside down in yoga, we can do all of these, we can go on a cleanse, a fast, we could do this retreat, read this book, take another workshop, get a life coach, whatever we're going to do, right? 10 years of therapy. And yet, if we don't address the root, right? If we don't address the root, it would be like going out into our gardens and taking a weed whacker, which, as we know, there's this thing called a weed whacker. So people do it. You go out there and you start whacking the tops off the weeds. Well, what happens is you realize if you didn't get the root out, the weed grows back. And so in my life and in working with others, I've noticed that there's this symptom-based approach that can happen sometimes more in the allopathic medicine realm. And that's not to make a judgment, it's an observation that if we spend our focus as practitioners or as recipients, if we spend our focus on all these symptoms and then try to negate the symptom, it's exhausting. And you've just chopped the top off of the weed. So you haven't gotten to the root of it. So it's just going to come back anyway. It may take a slightly different form. It may take a couple months or weeks or years, but it will come back. And so that's what's inspired me to be able to work at the root of it, or the heart of what it is. And so in the work that we do with our students, we guide them through a journey. And people that work with us, as you mentioned, it's quite deep. Like you could see the work, you go to the website, you could see some, copywriting around what is this thing? And really it's to be experienced, because we're complex beings. We're not just, simple in that way. And we have lots of dimensions and pieces and things that flow into some of the complications and challenges that we face in our life. And I find that everybody gets all kind of tied up, wrapped up in this like ball of yarn, or as we talked about, I think even more accurately, it's like, when your jewelry gets all tangled up together and you can't get the earrings out of the bracelets and the necklaces. And it's like, oh my gosh. And so a lot of the times once people come to us, they already feel like that. They're all tangled up. They have all these entanglements in their relationships, family dynamics, and their careers, what have you. And so instead of just like trying, it's like so futile to try to get everything apart by like pulling it apart. It's like, I find like, well, what's at the root of this? It's like when you find where it all is connected to, what is it all entangled, to? And so we guide people through a very, very specific formula, that the formula remains the same, no matter who we're working with. Doesn't matter their religion, their gender, their background, where they live in the world, their age. It's the same formula. It's just that the person brings the final ingredient. And so we meet people where they are, and that's why we call it alchemy. So we meet you where you are. We use the formula that's the same for every human being, right? However, the way in which the sequence in which we go through it may be slightly different for the person, depending on how much they've already healed or resolved or worked with or learned in life, or where they want to go, where their destination is, what they would like to do and see and experience. So the journey itself is unique for each person. There's no two people I've ever mentored that it's been the same. And the formula remains the same. It's just that the terrain that we travel through is unique for each person and really what it means to them. So we go through a process that's very in-depth and yet very grounded and clear. That's the other thing I think is really important ingredient to have, is not that you feel so scattered about doing all these things. It's this very specific sequence that we take people through that matches where they are and how they're going to get the most amount of growth with the least amount of suffering and pain, and so we guide people through this process by getting to the heart, to the root of it, instead we don't treat a bunch of symptoms. Everyone that starts the program does begin with an Ayurvedic lifestyle consultation. We frame everything to give you a very grounded approach so that you can grow. I find that you can't really grow without a strong foundation or without fertile ground. So we cultivate that with the individual, depending on what their lifestyle currently is and what would be the best lifestyle to support them. So we start from bringing balance and maintaining that balance. And then once we have that, you'll see what all the symptoms are. In that lifestyle consultation, we see what all the symptoms are. I'm not sleeping. I have a hard time with my diet. I don't know what to eat. What should I not eat? I'm not eating this. I'm not doing that. Right. Or how do I manage my work-life balance? Or what about the kids? And how? So we see all the symptoms and we give you time to get that all out, because we all have them. Right. And then we we as the mentors, we help to have the individual discover what's at the root of all of that imbalance. What is all this that it's stemming from? What are we avoiding? What are we hiding from? What are we running from? What are we numbing? And in doing that, we start to address the root. But as you can see, it's to be handled with care. We don't just go in there and like rip out the root of the problem. We also don't just whack the top off of it thinking, well, you just put this Band-Aid over this big gaping wound and you should be fine. It's like, probably not.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well, I love that, because with any of, when you're looking at personal transformation work and growth, like without kind of a process or someone there to kind of support you, it can feel very hard in a sense. Like it's a lot can come up. So I just think that's so beautiful that you brought together like a program that gets to the root, but it's like you said, the foundation is there. Like you start with that foundation and then you can start addressing those symptoms and get there. Like, I think that's really beautiful. What are I know that one of the modalities like that you use is with the healing is inner child work. And as part of that, like what do you feel, or what other sort of like modalities or healing do you think people really connect with to really get to that root of who they are and where they need to heal and address? Is there any?
Yeah, it's a great question. And also your observation of having someone by your side as a guide, because, the saying as simple as you can't see the forest through the trees. I mean, that's just the simple fact, right? There's nothing wrong with us if we can't figure everything out by ourselves, right? We actually do need to have a guide that's very familiar with that terrain. And that's what the mentors and I represent, is like, yeah, we live in these woods, right? Like we know all
about
that.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it's okay. You don't have to be in there like completely afraid and like think you're supposed to know which way is out. You maybe this is uncharted for you. You haven't been here before. And so most people haven't been inside their own kind of inner nature in this way. And so that is why we use the inner child as a part of an actual, it's a 3 selves model. So that is the specialty of my work. Is some people would simplify it and say like inner child work. However, 2 things, I always ask that people come with beginner's mind. Because when we hear a term like inner child, especially in the industries that we're in, we're like, oh yeah, I know what that is. And I just feel like that really limits us with anything. Oh yeah, I know what that is. It's like, well, hold on though. In this context, have we ever explored it in this way? And so right off the bat, to help facilitate that beginner's mind, we actually work with a 3 selves model. So it's not even just, the inner child that we're focusing on. The inner child is, he or she holds the keys to what the unhealed, unprocessed experiences and maybe some of the false or limiting beliefs are. That's within the inner child. And the work that we do is facilitating, and by like all means, you have got to have a support system. It doesn't have to be us, but each one of us heroes on our journey, we have to. It's part of even Joseph Campbell's model, is like when the hero finally does have the courage to leave the comfort of home and go on this epic journey, they meet the mentor. They meet the fellowship, the allies along the way. And so it's imperative. So I want to kind of just like reinforce that point of like, you're not supposed to do this alone, right? So whoever your support system is, just make sure you have one, have a fellowship, have a community around you, right? You're not meant to do this all on your own. So that's one. And then once you do get into that space and you are on your journey, to be able to connect to these different parts of self, because we're not just one-dimensional, we're multi-dimensional. And so the inner child is a part of us. And most people would, if you ask them, about themselves, if I ask the 2 of you, you probably say, well, I'm a woman of this age, maybe I'm a mother, I'm a this. These are all these roles and how we identify ourselves. And so most of the time when I ask this question, people believe they are a full-grown adult. And I just know better. I know that you think you're a full-grown adult, right? And that is one part of you, right? Is the adult self. That's one of the three selves. But we're going to go on a conscious journey. So immediately when we start to engage with someone, people start thinking of themselves more like the hero, more like, you could call it the conscious or the spiritual adult or the awakening adult. This is not just an adult that's like, I'm supposed to have everything figured out, and this is how I operate. This is what I believe, and this is what I like, what I don't like. We actually start to let go of that adult version of ourselves, and we start coming into more of this an awakening adult and start discovering things about ourselves, and then we can hold space for this child part of self. That is where all of our reactions come from. So if you ever find yourself either, whether it's at work or in a relationship and you're like, why am I throwing a tantrum? It's like, because is throwing a tantrum. You're really not a grown-up. It's okay.
I love that.
So anyway, we like to have fun too along the way. We go very deep, very deep, but I like to make this is a real life experience, you guys. This is. So it's like, let's make it real. And so when we're interacting, I like to get people out of their heads, out of their intellects, right? Out of their ego and this mind structure, and get into the heart of what it is. And this is what we do. So everyone, after their first appointment, they leave and I'm like, do you have a car seat like in your car? Because you're taking a little girl or boy home with you. You got to make sure they're all buckled up, like, what is going on? I just help, to the process. Yeah.
I love that you say that too, with the inner child, and like, just, it is a part of you and is always there. And because and coming with the beginner's mind too, like when I think inner child, I'm like, oh, all these pieces of my inner child that need healed and stuff, but it's also connecting with like the fun part of your inner child, like the playful. And so it's like, I love how you like embrace that, like it's like, let's bring this child is here, and like, it's, not something that we're like here to smash, or like, not smash, but heal, and like make sure that it's like bringing those pieces that were there of like the play and the joy. Like, as adults, we kind of take ourselves so seriously yeah.
It's the curiosity too. It's like
Yeah.
the reminds us to be curious, and that's why we say beginner's mind, because when we're curious as the adult, I just have people be like, I know you think you know who you are. Let's just pretend, just humor me. Let's just say you have no idea who you are. Let's find out. And that's what we do, is people really truly like, oh my gosh, I thought I was, it's like people, when they graduate from the program, they realize that they are far grander than they could have ever imagined, and that their identity was very limited before, their belief system was very limited before, and also on automatic pilot, like just operation from childhood. Really, it's like a lot of this is outdated, and a lot of this was modeled, and it wasn't something we consciously chose. It went into the subconscious and then just went on repeat, and we're like, wait, is that how I want to respond to a situation? Is through emotional reaction, or do I want to have a response, to honor emotion and to respond? So again, just giving a little example of some of it, but the child reminds us to be curious. And so a lot of the work as the mentor, we're holding the space and reminding the adults in front of us to be curious about the answers from the child. So when I ask somebody, tell me about your childhood, let's explore 0 to 7, 0 because in utero counts, by the way, like we're in the womb, or within our mother, we're eating and drinking and taking in everything, emotions and otherwise, environment and relationship dynamics. So a lot of people don't even like, well, I don't remember that. It's like, that's okay. Believe me, part of you definitely does, and we work within this space, and, we go into this place with the curiosity. Like, we're not just, like you said, we're not going in there because something's wrong, we have to fix it. It's because this is where all of the keys lie to unlocking who we truly are. And part of that is to see what the formative years were, and choose which pieces of that we really want to nurture to grow, and what pieces of that we're going to make a different choice and refine that and change that now. So
right. And I also wanted to you mentioned Ayurveda. So for those who are not aware of what it is, it's a natural system of medicine, started 3,000 years ago and originated in India. And that Ayurveda is actually from Sanskrit, means Ayur, I think, is life, and Veda is the science of knowledge. So it really translates to the knowledge of life. And the basic principle is to treat illness by maintaining a balance within the body, the mind, and the body, the mind, and consciousness through proper diet and drinking and some herbal remedies. So for you, I know that you are probably helping your clients finding their dosha, their bioenergy center, and which is the mind body constitution, and vikurti, which is the individual's current state of health, relative health, or imbalance. So how does that part of Ayurveda looks like when you're with your clients?
Well, it's a great question. And, even like what you just said, to distill down thousands of years of life science for people, I really had to consider this when I was in the program development state with Healing from Within, which is the name of my program. It was very much coming through organically through my life experiences, through my time spent in meditation and deep reflection. But once I realized that people really needed a roadmap, because during my time at the Chopra Center, I got the pleasure of working with thousands of people over those 5 years. And there was a common theme that I noticed. And one of that was that people seemed very scattered. They seemed to be trying and so much searching, like just perpetually seeking, and it is a little bit harder, I noticed, in some of these other traditions where it's not maybe as straightforward as like a religious tradition that says like, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. When you're starting to open up to like, what is true for me and what is my beliefs and how does that look and how do I want to live? How do I want to heal? I find that that's wonderful that there's a freedom in that. And then on the other end of that, it can be super detrimental to people that there's like an overwhelm of like choices. Just like so many ways to go. So when people would come to the center, I would notice like just getting them grounded in and knowing like something like Ayurveda teaches mind-body constitution. So it's taking into consideration, and even though it says mind-body, it's also mind-body emotions, as you said, spirit or consciousness. So it's taking into consideration the entire being, but it's making it really simple and being like, hey, you are by nature, your tendency is more this. And right now in life, this is what's out of balance with you. And this is how we're going to help to bring that into balance. So your natural constitution can come forward and shine brightly.
Right.
So when I was trying to consider this, I'm like, how am I going to distill this down? Because this is one lesson in a 4-stage program. And each stage has 6 lessons. So you can imagine, what am I going to teach them? Like become scholars in Ayurveda, like first off the bat. And I wondered how I would do that with my team of mentors that I trained too. I'm like, do they all need to go become Ayurvedic practitioners as well? So what I decided to do was make it very, very user-friendly. Have it be Ayurveda 101 in the sense of, like you said, this is what we use. We say, this is the wisdom or the science of life. And we're going to use that to help you to know what your natural constitution is and see where it's out of balance. And then we're going to give you very practical lifestyle recommendations that are going to help you to do that. And here's what you're going to start with. You're going to do this daily or weekly. And then next month, we're going to check in and we're going to add these other pieces once you're ready. And the first thing that everybody learns in everybody's lifestyle program is meditation. And so we teach people how to meditate because that will take care of a lot of the symptoms, But the way we use Ayurveda is so that people do not have to know all, like they don't have to study Ayurveda or be fluent in Sanskrit. A lot of that is foreign to people that live in the States. And they're like, I don't know what all this is, right? So what we've done is, like I said, I wanted to distill things down, but also make sure we empower people with wisdom. And so the program itself has an online component that is your textbook that you go along with it, and they're full-length video lessons for everything. So for Ayurveda, we've broken it down into what is Ayurveda, what are the doshas, what is the nourishment for these different doshas. So in between people's one-on-one sessions, their homework or their life work is to learn about the subjects that they are starting to use in their life. So it's an empowerment process where they're learning, but again, just what they need versus like a vast study of any of these topics. Yeah.
That makes so much sense, especially I think in qualitative type of healing and medicine where you can't measure numbers, as opposed to, you mentioned allopathic medicine, that's very quantitative. You got numbers, you got, you know what you're dealing with. So how do you know as their mentor when they have reached their measured success? What will be their seasonal destination that you know they have reached and you can move forward from there?
Well, the reason that we have the intervals once a week in the beginning of the work is so that the mentors can keep their fingers on the pulse. We're very closely working with our students. So you have your one-on-one session with your mentor. So your mentor knows what's going on. It's an hour long, it's over the phone, and you're able to really connect every week. So there's not a big lapse in time. And that's the other thing about healing and transformation. You have to be consistent. That
Right.
interval does change. It's weekly in the beginning, but once we get through active healing, then it's every other week, every 3 weeks, every month. And then when somebody graduates, they check in with the seasons, their mentor, to see how they can grow into this next phase of their life. It's more of the empowerment and mastery work. But yeah, we very much keep our fingers on the pulse with our and also the student mentor ratio. I only have our mentors working with the amount of students that they can really hold space for. And so it's about quality, not quantity. We take in a very limited amount of students per mentor for that one-on-one attention. And then I lead the live class every week too. So we make sure there's a community that you're studying with of other like-hearted individuals that are on this journey. So you can ask your questions about the lesson work. It could be a technical question like, hey, I see on here I'm supposed to, I don't know, scrape my tongue with a tongue scraper. What is this tongue scraper thing? It's like an Ayurvedic practice. It's like, oh, well, this is what it is. And, then the whole group can learn. They're like, where can we get it? Oh, here it is. Something as practical as that might be a foreign concept to somebody's routine. To people saying, you know what, I'm having a really hard morning right now, and I'd love to request some mentoring. Could we work through something that just happened? I just had this conversation with my sister, and I'm just like, I'm feeling devastated, and so then I'm on the webinar, but the nice thing is, so are our other mentors. And so the person can get multiple perspectives that can be really helpful. So if it's not my student that I'm mentoring, their mentor could chime in too, because they know the backstory of it. But it's not just limited to that. Now the student can also open it up to the community and have other mentors chime in of what they're seeing from their perspective. And maybe there's somebody even in our community, this is students there for other students too, and saying, hey, I'm a mother too, and I completely understand what you're going through. Or somebody else is like, wow, I don't have children of my own. I never even considered that maybe somebody would be going through this. And so it creates this compassion and this community and connection that we need in healing. Like I said, it's not an isolated thing. We don't heal on our own. I mean, the work is, we're the only ones that can, we're the only ones that can do it, but we don't have to do it alone is the point. And it's most effective when we're in community.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the beautiful thing, I think, of group coaching in general, like that you can reflect back, what other people are also going through, maybe on a different situation slightly, but there's so many parallels there that we can, oh yeah, I'm not the only one that feels that way, or I'm not the only one that's going through something similar. Yeah, it's powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in that way, we really know where the students are, and they know where they ask them, how was your life work this week? How did it go? And I think accountability and repetition is so important in this journey. And so we know if the person, like, usually when somebody's like really scattered and they're just spinning around, and you might notice this for 2 weeks in a row, you just say, so how's your meditation practice? That's all you have to say.
Yeah.
You can tell right away. They're like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay. So.
Yeah. When it probably gives them like to see that, you see those pieces that like, oh, that part you might want to pick that up a little in the meditation, that kind of reinforces how important it is. And because I think when all of this, like, it can be so overwhelming, all of these different tools like meditation and the Ayurveda. And so to kind of
make sure more is not better, as we've seen in all of these wisdom conditions. It's really simplifying and using things that are very refined so that you get the result that you're looking to get in a really effective manner. And so that's the thing. These lifestyle programs, you may just see, like, if I was to send you yours, you might see 4 things on there and go, that's all? Like, what? I don't understand. Shouldn't I be doing like a ton of things? And you're like, oh, this is good. Let's just do these things, full heart into it,
Yeah.
So we really do work with that less is more, and simplifying and creating space and refinement and all this busyness. Nobody needs another list of things that they're supposed to do or not do, or not eat. We're like, okay, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, so true. Well, and that you have too, like, I love in the Healing from Within program, like, as part of the steps, like the self-mastery, like, that it's never, I think that, like, we often look at, like, okay, self-growth or personal growth is like a to-do list item. And it's like, it's not, you have to kind of get away from looking at it like that, because it's like, you're always going to be, I mean, it's your life's journey to just continuing to discover and be curious. So if you're coming at it at this approach that, like, okay, I'm going to heal myself now, or like get fixed, and then that's it. Like, it's all about the integration and just continuing to constantly refine. And
absolutely. I mean, and it's so funny too, because that's such a part of the human condition. I cannot tell you how many thousands of times I've heard people say, well, I thought that I had worked through this, and now, and it's like, you're going to your next level. You did work through that part of it, and now the universe is saying to you, you can grow even more. Isn't that exciting? And so we help people. A lot of the work as a mentor, you're just helping to redirect mindset. You're helping to expand perception. And so, there is this really hilarious idea that, like, we're going to get somewhere and then it's going to stay that way somehow. And then we're done.
Right.
It's like, okay, fine. That's fine. But what I found, the easiest way to describe it is, like, we're like trees. Like, as long as we're alive, we're growing. So we're going to deepen our roots and we're going to heighten our reach. And isn't that beautiful? The tree's not like, wait, I thought I was full grown now. Like, what's this? What is this other shoot coming off the top of me? What's this blossom over here? What is this root trying to go deeper down? It's like, that is not how nature operates. And to just remember, we are nature, and that is our natural state to grow. But we have this idea, and once we break through that illusion, it no longer rules us. And we're like, no, that's exactly what I'm here to do, is to learn and to grow. And that's the beauty of life. We get to.
Right.
Yeah.
I always mention to my clients, as a nutritionist, no one is waiting for you around the corner with a trophy. These milestones should be celebrated by you. So yes, I'm here to hold you accountable. I do give them, weekly checklists to do it, and I have them email that to me. So we'll have that immediate feedback for me to encourage them on. But no one is going to wait around the corner with a trophy. Yeah, you did it. Okay, and now what? What? Right?
Yeah, and as soon as you get that trophy, most people start collecting trophies.
Yes.
And they're waiting for the next one and the next one. So if you're trophy oriented, it's totally fine. All I would say is that the only one that's going to be around the corner with the trophy is going to be you. So how do you then celebrate your wins? And how do you hold that space for yourself? And again, even with yourself, pay attention to constantly trying to achieve the next and the next and the next and the next.
Yes.
So I think.
And what is that coming from? Like, where is that? Who needs to give you a pat in the back? So going back to perhaps childhood, who are you trying to please?
Yes.
Because if it's you, and most of the time it is not you, then you don't need the constant, oh my God, excellent job. Well, you don't need that. You're just moving through life from milestone to milestone to milestone. Like you said, life is not linear, right? And we're all gonna be in our final destination where we know it is, the other realm. But for right now, going to milestone for milestone, not needing that constant pat in the back, oh my God, you're amazing, in order to move forward, that tells a lot about perhaps in homeostasis that you have reached in your own inner work that you have done.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And it's so, I mean, it's like, it's rampant, like pleasing, that word, like pleasing. Who are you trying to please? People pleasing is that's the number one affliction I see in human beings just across the board. And this is not something negative. This is actually one of our greatest gifts. Once we learn where that stems from, what belief that's then starting to provide for us in the world of like, we aren't safe to just make choices and decisions that are aligned for ourselves, that we in fact need to orient ourselves so that we are pleasing everyone else. It's futile, it's exhausting, it's very unhealthy, and it creates a lot of unhealthy family dynamics and dynamics in general between people. And it's all based on this idea that we're responsible for other people's thoughts, feelings, and actions, and that they're responsible for ours. And it's just not true. And that's why we have we call this codependency within the Healing from Within program. You can call it people pleasing. You can call it whatever you want. We redefine what codependency is in Healing from Within and help people to see, like, it's not even a matter of like, are you codependent? It's like, how is codependency shown? Because if you have not done this deep exploration, this is how we're wired as human beings. We are wired, we are taught, we are trained to be codependent by nature. Like, oh, you don't want to say that, you're going to hurt their feelings. And hey, this was all well-meaning parenting and society and all this, because we need to fit in and we don't want to, we got to put on the happy face and all these things. Well, the thing is that people then just feel like they're like living for everyone else. And very few people actually feel fulfilled. But the reason is there's just this redirection of energy that needs to take place into coming back in. So all those accomplishments, achievements, compliments, anything we're looking for out there, when people are really getting honest with it, they're realizing that they are, in fact, codependent. They are trying to please others, and why they feel so, lacking in that within themselves. And so we help people with really practical ways to start seeing that and then to flip that around. So it is very, very important, because you can accomplish all these things, but it's what's the why. But very rarely I'm sure we'll see this, is like it's only when somebody's really like healthy, healed, balanced, has already really done a huge amount of their active healing work, that the reason that they're so determined and driven is because it's driven by inspiration. It's driven by a love, a passion. It's not being driven from the wound, right? Wound driven behavior is it's easy to call out. If you know it, you're like, this is wound driven. So it doesn't matter how successful the person looks on the outside. What is driving that desire for that success? So that's why a lot of the clients that I work with that come to us, that they could be high profile celebrities. They could be living in the house that everybody thinks that makes you happy, and have the marriage and the kids and the dogs and the career and all these things and all this, whatever, acknowledgement, and yet they're miserable. They're trapped. They're completely bankrupt inside. Right. And so it doesn't matter. Like, all of that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, what matters is the same for all of us. We all want to feel a sense of belonging. We all want to feel a sense of love. We all want to feel a sense of acceptance. And we're not going to get that from any accomplishment or from anyone outside ourselves. And so that's the path that we follow, is to bring it home to the heart.
And I really hear some parenting advice there, which brings me to the next question. It's a question that any parent and or practitioners would like to know, like, how do you still take care of yourself and or your children while taking care of others? Because you just mentioned something really powerful with the influencers being on the rise on social media and our kids growing older, them thinking that should be their norm. How do you guide your children back to their truth?
Oh, I mean, it's an act of balance and grace, and being really connected and centered to what is true, right? And so for me, what that is creating this. We actually spoke about this briefly last time, and this is what I've noticed, and what was the most helpful for me. What I noticed with my own life and in those that I was mentoring, I kept noticing this thing, and I was like, there's just a piece out of place. What is this? And I would keep saying to them, like, you have to nurture the nurturer. right? So that means whether it's the one that's at home with the children, raising the children, or maybe both parents are, right? So you've got the nurture in that case, the nurturer in the case of our industry and our field. Maybe we don't, we're not married, don't have families, but we're constantly working with other people. Well, we have to nurture the nurturer, care for the caretaker, right? And I couldn't figure out for the longest time. I'm like, why is this so hard for people to understand? And so then it wasn't until I realized that, like, when you start using like very practical terms, people then like, oh, I see. And so I was like, you know what it is there's something just off in the order of operation. And so we all remember, back in math class, like PEMDAS, it's like, if you want to solve a problem, the equation is set up as such is that you have to address certain things first, or you're going to get an incorrect answer. Right? Or in our case, things will be out of balance, right? So I started thinking about that. I'm like, okay, people just need to see in their life how they can get that flow of energy moving in the right direction for them, right? You hear these sayings like, fill up and give from your overflow, put your mask on, oxygen mask on first, and then assist someone else. Like, we get these things, but it's like, okay, how can we live that? And so usually what I find is most helpful is for people to really reflect on how detrimental it is that they're not doing it that way. That's kind of the first step. For whatever reason, human beings are motivated by pain. Like when they like actually can acknowledge that there's pain, that there's dysfunction, that there's something out of balance, that actually motivates them to do something more than like, oh, that's a nice idea. Like, listen to this right now. I'm like, oh yeah, fill my cup up first and then give, and then like go about their day and do the opposite still, because they've been, programmed that way for however long. It's really when we pause for a moment and go, if I'm a nurturer, a caretaker, if I'm a supporter, am I in fact, do I have my daily routine set up where I'm filling up first and giving from my overflow? And when I ask myself that question, no, the answer is absolutely not. I was working at the Chopra Center, at this like prestigious center, and, helping all these other people. And I was completely run down, in the middle of it. If I was being honest with myself, I'm like, this is not how I want to do this. And so that is when I started to go, you know what? I want to still do what I do. I want to do it in a different way. What is going to be the driving force? That's when I flipped everything around and got the order of operation in check. So I'm starting to do a little work with this, and I'll just put it out there very quick. So if you have this model of PEMDAS, right, this acronym, I thought it'd be fun for people to start looking at the pieces of this and maybe be able to do this in their own life in a practical way. So what if we change it from these mathematical, words to the first one, P, being prioritize, right? Get your priorities straight. Right? Really be like, okay, I'm going to prioritize. And I'd highly encourage people to prioritize presence, or you could call it self-care or nurture, or whatever you want to call it, right? So prioritize presence in your life. What is that going to be? What is your self-care going to be? So for me, it's every morning, breath work, meditation, and tea ceremony. That's my priority. Okay. Then the next one, E, embody. Actually execute it. It's a nice idea. Oh, this is what I do for self-care. We all do that, right? Like, oh, I love to do all these things. And are we doing it? Be the embodiment of it. Be the example of it, because everybody around you will actually feel this, whether it's your clients, whether it's your children, they will see it if you're actually practicing what you preach, right? So you've got prioritizing your self-care or your presence practices, embodying it, actually walking the talk of it, then being able to maintain that. Because again, how many really brilliant ideas have we had? It's like, that's great. So looking at what does it mean to maintain this on a daily basis, if it's a daily thing that you do, or is this a weekly thing you do? Is this a monthly thing you do? Is this something you do annually? So kind of see what would go into the maintenance of prioritizing this self-care, this presence practice. Then that's those first three, that's how you actually cultivate the actual vessel or the fertile ground to even give from. Like, don't even try to give to anybody if you're not willing to do those first three, right? So if you are, then it's like, okay, good. You've put your oxygen mask on first. You're clear for takeoff. Otherwise, do not try to take this flight. It's just pointless, right? Now we're going to move to the other side, the DAS part of it, which is dedicate, right? So you're going to dedicate or devote yourself, that energy that you've cultivated. Now you have this nectar. Ooh, who are you going to devote this to? Who are you going to dedicate this to? What areas of life are you going to pour this energy into? So get your categories. So for me, it's my children, because this is the time of life that I'm in. You know, I'm a mother, I have children. So children is one of my dedicated areas, right? And if you don't have children, then that would probably your, whatever it is that's there. It's your career, it's your community, it's your purpose, right? So you decide what are those things. So for me, it's my children, it's my purpose, my career work, and then it's my my social. My social for me is my friends and family that are not necessarily my children, and it's also my studies and all my passions and arts and things. So for me, those are my three devoted, you know, dedicated categories. Then we need to allocate. Okay, so we have 100% to start with. And if you're following this too, notice that I didn't say how much of this 100% are you devoting to your self-care. This is where I think people get all like crazy, and then they can't find enough time in the day or the equation. Remember, we said you're not even going to be qualified for takeoff if you didn't do those first three things. So those first three things are what create the energy to begin with, right? So now you're going to be able to divvy up, because you were already taken care of. You're not even a part of this 100% energy that you've now made and cultivated. Now you get to allocate what that's going to be. And in different times of life, that's going to be different things. Right now, I have children that are still in the home. So I'm going to dedicate 50%. I'm going to allocate 50% of that energy to that category, right? To that devotion in my life. And then I'm going to take 30 and I'm going to place that into my career and my purpose. And I'm going to take 20 and I'm going to place it into my social and artistic and, you know, friendships and all this. And I'm just going to be real about it. I'm not going to try to give 100% to each of these things when that doesn't work. It mathematically does not work, right? And then from that place, now that you've dedicated, you've allocated, now you actually get to share. See, it's the last step, not the first. Right? So it's like most people are like, okay, I got to take care of, I got to nurture, I got to share, I got to raise children, I got to run businesses. Like, oh, cool. But yet they are bankrupt. They're working from a bankrupt energy source. They're trying to drive, like go cross country on an empty tank. You know, we can come up with like
so many,
right? But you know, you wouldn't do that. You're like, I'm going to go leave on this epic road trip and I'm going to start with an empty tank. Like, why do we do this though, when it comes to the most important things in our lives? Like a road trip, we get it. But raising our children, running our businesses, having, you know, our loves and our lives. And so anyway, I just thought that would be a neat thing. And this is just new, actually. From the last conversation that we had, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to actually come to us and I'm going to say, like, what would that look like for us practically? You know, so
that is brilliant. That's beautiful. I love, like, you always do hear like self-care is like, okay, what part of this pie is your self-care? But like to take that totally out of the pie, because that's actually what's generating your energy. And then the rest is how you can allocate, you know, divide up that energy, but you've got to get to that place first. Yeah,
absolutely. It's
beautiful.
Like, going back to these models, like it's like the aircraft. Then you can determine how many trips it's going to take, where its route's going to be. But without the aircraft, you wouldn't even have these conversations, right? So yeah, you know, and so that's again the order of operation. Just getting things practically straight in our brains that tend to get all emotional and like upside down. I don't know why, but this is a simple way.
And I also find, like, as women, it's almost like I'm supposed to take care of everyone else, and it's okay for me to not take care of myself. No, it's not okay. And that's a conclusion that I came to after having 3 kids. And only recently, maybe at the beginning of the pandemic, it is not okay to not take care of myself. And I use the list because for me, it's like I always tell my husband, I'll die with a list in my hand because it's an ongoing list. Yes. So since the pandemic, I put myself on that list. And I tell all my female clients, put yourself on that list. So you coming up with this brilliant PEMDAS is amazing. I'm going to use it for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm so happy because it's helpful. You know, a lot of the times I try to reverse engineer things because I navigate things and then people will ask me a question like you did. Well, how do you navigate this? And I'll go, well, how do I navigate it? Like I do it, but it's automatic pilot for me. Like I just do it. And so to go backwards and go, how do I do it? I'm like, well, this is what I do. People can't believe that I have young children and that I meditate and do my presence practice for 2 hours every morning. Almost every morning it's 2 hours, sometimes an hour, but people are like, what? Like, how do you find the time? I'm like, I don't find the time. It's not like, oh, where's the time? It's like, I make the time. Like, I prioritize that. It's, you don't find it. It's not like, oh yeah, I found extra time that you don't have. I have that. No. And so if I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I just, like I said, I just reverse engineer everything. It's like, what do I got to do to make this happen and get the excuses out of the way? The excuses again, but I do want to give that PEMDAS model as, it's an acronym. It's a list, it's a trick, it's a life hack. But the caveat here with these life hacks are, I want to be very sensitive and also just very like realistic about the fact that you could have that. And if your belief system, though, is still operating from a place where you don't matter and you're not important, because that was the model that you took away from your childhood experiences, even if your parents did not say to you, you don't matter, you're not important, your pain, your experiences that you had that were challenging and hard, and everyone has them, and it doesn't matter who you're raised by, even if you're raised by Care Bears, okay, you have a core wound, and that core wound leads you to make core beliefs about yourself, about others in the world. And so something like a parent even dying, like, I'm sorry, they couldn't control that, and you feel abandoned, then from that you could create a belief that everyone leaves, for example. And so it's like, you have that is nobody's fault. It is, though, our responsibility now, remembering we're heroes and that we are on this path. It is our responsibility now to work through it, to resolve it. So those limiting beliefs don't get in the way of actually being able to do, like what I just said is all lovely and wonderful. And you guys, it will absolutely work, but you'll only actually be able to do it if there's a belief inside yourself that says, absolutely, and that is what I'm going to do, right? But most of the time, 99% of the time, people, the defeating thoughts and beliefs will come in, the martyr archetype that they thought that it's been made holy and sacred, right? Like even like poverty was made holy and sacred, right? Whatever it was. So people get into
if you're a healer, you should be
absolutely. And so then it's like, if you don't believe that it's like sacred to fill up your vessel and care for yourself first, if you feel like that's selfish, which, by the way, most people that are probably listening right now, if they're being honest with themselves, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. But there is a very collective belief that mothers or care, givers or takers of fathers, parents, that you're selfish if you put yourself first. It's like, well, let's just unpack that one. Where did that come from? You know what I mean? And again, most of us we're not walking around saying these things out loud. It's in our unconscious, right? That's saying like, no, you cannot choose yourself over your child. It's your child. They're 5 years old. You have to choose them first. And it's like, yes. And in order for me to do that, I have got to make sure I have a full tank to do that, to serve at the highest level. And that's why that last part of that equation was share. It could also be serve. And that's when we serve, like really, truly can serve from our overflow. And it's not wound driven. And that's very different. So that's why I can give these little tips and things like this. It's just, as long as everybody understand that it only actually is effective and have longevity when our true deep, the roots have been tended to.
And that's why by now we already know that the unique perspective or perception that someone has of their world directly affect their internal physiology. And that is the correlation between the thoughts, the physiological responses, and the feelings. So a lot of times I will use the IFS system, which is internal family system, part of a therapy psychological system, with my clients that have nutrition difficulties, and I see that they're taking 3 steps forward and then they're taking 6 steps back. And then I know there's what I like to call a saboteur within them that has not healed yet. So I love working with them on that. And another modality that I like is through trapped emotion. So there is a doctor by the name Dr. Bradley, and he talks about how there's trapped traumas in our body. And through applied kinesiology, muscle testing, and emotion code, he helps to restore the harmony within that system. So you're absolutely right. We can give all those tips and tricks to our clients and our community, but we got to get down to the root of what is their belief system. And most of the time they don't know. So this is a joint work with someone that can help the individual with.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why even a lot of the times we'll say the unconscious instead of the subconscious, because I feel like it just like paints a picture. It's like we're either consciously making a choice or we're consciously choosing words or expressing ourselves in a way, or it's in the unconscious. And it's just like us breathing right now. We're not have to be like, we're not all sitting here going, inhale. Okay. Exhale. Inhale. Yeah. I mean, that would be exhausting, right? It's just happening automatically. And that's what's also happening with a lot of the MO, the mode of operation. That's our operating system. A lot of our operating system begins very unconscious. And then when you do this work, your operating system is now like, oh, at 50% conscious, at 60% conscious. And when you graduate from our program, you're living within that 90 to 100% conscious range where you're very, very aware. And you realize that your perception creates your reality, like you just said. So if your unconscious mind's perception is the world isn't a safe place, I don't care how many affirmations you say in the morning and go, the world is a safe place. The world is a safe place. Okay, I heard it on this podcast. The world is a safe place. I'm good. I'm good. You walk out that door and all of a sudden the little girl inside of you is like, no, the world is a scary place. You know? And so you have to tend to it. Again, not your fault that that's there, but it is our responsibility to be able to heal what needs to be healed so that we can consciously create a new belief. That's really, it's not just, you can't slap an affirmation over a belief. It doesn't work.
Right. And I think part of our job is to have that awareness strategies that we can use with our clients, or we can even use as individuals to gain voluntary control over our internal physiology, because now we know that dis-ease that occurs is a manifestation of a trauma and a correlation to an internal organ within us. Even just recently, I heard a lecture by Dr. Amit Goswami, who is a scientist, and he's a big advocate of that correlation between internal organs and manifestation of a disease. And he said, well, breast cancer happens to mostly women because it's right by the heart chakra. And the reason why it's there, one has to ask themselves, what is a trauma that I'm not admitting? What is something that I can't get over? What is something that is trapped right here, and then it manifests through the breast? And of course, there's the application of allopathic medicine should one decides to go that route. But the most important thing, even in Louise Hay book, You Can Heal Your Life, is that correlation between internal organ and a dis-ease that manifests in our body needs to be accounted back to where is this striving from. And then you can clear the root cause for good once you understand that correlation.
Absolutely. And these are profound teachers and scientists and doctors that are just, they're tapping into universal wisdom. That is what it is. That's nature's rhythms tells us that, you know, even that book, it was reminding me of it when you're speaking, The Body Keeps the Score. You know, it's like, so does the belief system. That's the thing. The belief system keeps the score. So unless we fully look at every aspect of it, then the chances of it really being resolved, because you can't get over it. You can't get over it. You can't get under it. You can't get around it. That's what we spend we waste so much time trying to do that. And really it's just, we have to move through it, whatever it is. You know, what disease, like you said, it's dis-ease. You don't just get over it. You don't just slap a medication on it, because guess what? It will come right back. So it's about getting to the heart, to the root of it, like we started with, and tending to that, and knowing that when you get to the root and you walk that path yourself and you walk through it, and with the guidance and support and love of those around you, you deserve that. That's important. Then you get to the other side and you really do come back home, but with that that elixir that nectar, that gold that you have learned along that journey, that path. And so all of these things, to me, it's like any of our avoidance of something, it's actually like, why would we avoid it? That's where our gold's going to come from. Like, I always use alchemy as like a, as a symbol for this work. And it's like from lead to gold. Like if you've got a lot of lead, I'm like, ooh, you got a lot of lead. Great. We're going to make a lot of gold. I'm not like, oh, you've got so much lead. You're ruined. Forget it. No, this is great. You've got some, you came here, an ambitious little soul that said, I'm gonna have a lot of gold. Like, okay, great. So we got a lot of lead to alchemize, to sort through. So you have that gift, that wisdom that's at the end. But when we're running and hiding and numbing and avoiding that which is lead in our life, that which is painful, that hurts, we lose the opportunity to grow and to really have our gold. So I hope that this inspires people to realize, like, no, like the wounding, that's not our fault. It's no one's fault. It is our responsibility and our honor to be able to work with it, no matter how it's showing up, presenting, whether it's physically or emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all of the above, that there is a way, and the way is right through the heart, and it is within each and every one of us. So, yeah.
It's so beautifully said. Yeah. I think that, you just took us on a full circle journey of, again, like, it's the root of it is where it's important. That's where the gold is. That's where you're going to find everything you need to blossom into that. As you were saying that lead to gold, I was thinking of like the lotus flower, because I think that it's like, it's got to go through the mud. It has to take the nourishment of all of the bad in order to fully bloom and
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about Alisha's work, you can go to her website, AlishaOlivierPark.com. Is there anything we want to share with our listeners, Brooke, Alisha?
Yeah, Alisha, is there anything? I know I saw your Italy retreat in 2023 that you're doing, which looks amazing. Is anything else just that you want to touch on that you're, up to, or
and Brooke and I are available to assist you. We're available.
Yeah.
Should you need assistance in Italy?
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I would love to have you ladies with us, and you're more than welcome. Absolutely. Especially, I love working with people, like I said, the nurturers, right? Like, come and get nourished and fill up and have fun. So there's opportunities to work with me and my team of mentors from anywhere in the world. We've been teaching and sharing and mentoring for healing from within, for online and at a distance and all over the world for the last 10 years. So this isn't new to us. This is how most of our students and clients are all around the world, and it makes for a very rich community. So if someone felt called to this work and would like to go on this journey and have the support of a community and a mentor, a guide, and have a roadmap to this crazy thing called life, that is absolutely an offering for people. So that's first and foremost. And then to that, I love being together with people. And so we do gatherings throughout the year. I serve tea here in my cottage, this little magical cottage, downtown Bend, Oregon. I serve tea once a week. It's a service to sit and to just be with people. And we're here in the woods, and right now it's all snowy around me, and it's a little cottage. Like, there's windows and sunlights and crystals and lavender hanging from the ceiling. So if you're ever in Bend, come over and have some tea. And this is a tea ceremony, so it's silent and it's very enriching and deep and beautiful. And then we have the Italy retreat that will be in the first part of the summer, the June, July part of the summer. And it's going to be beautiful. This time we're going to the north. So we're going to be right in between Milan and Venice. And so we'll be right on a lake and this expansive energy of the water. And my brother and I co-facilitate that retreat. He lives there locally in Italy with his wife and 2 boys. And so we get the best of being a local and exploring everything from his his care and tending. He's amazing. He's fluent, and he takes us, he knows exactly where to go and how to get there and how we're doing this thing. So we're all like together in this group and totally taken care of. And then I take care of all the wellness pieces. So we started every morning with tea and meditation and some yoga and movement. And then we go into some of these types of discussions all before breakfast. And then we have this fantastic breakfast. And then we have an excursion every day that we go on, whether it's a cooking class on site with our private chef, or we're going to go venture out and see some beautiful art or history, or go wine tasting. So it's this beautiful blend of things, and it's called La Dolce Vita. So it's enjoying and celebrating the sweet life. So we are starting registration. Priority registration will be next week, actually. So I'll let you all know. And then after that, we will have a fall retreat, and that most likely is going to actually be in Tahoe. And we're going to experience Hope Valley. And that will be much more of where the Italy retreat is a retreat vacation hybrid model. So you're like expansive and celebratory and all this with the wellness practices to help ground you. The Hope Valley will be very much a deep inner exploration. So that will be the healing from within retreat, where the work will be very deep and internal and still fun and lively and connective, but it will definitely be more like internal versus external. So a little bit of something for everyone.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here on Raising the New Earth. Alisha, we thank you. Brooke, any final words, or we're good?
It was so lovely to have you and just learn all about your work, and just you very beautifully embody everything that you have spoken so beautifully about. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alisha.
It's such an honor. Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're beautiful inside and out, and you just raised our vibration a whole lot. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to share. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll see you guys on our next episode. Bye.
Bye. That was wonderful.